Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will interview Chelsea Hansen, Curator of the Washington Masonic Library and Museum.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have three of our four usual hosts. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Very Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge number 153 in Kelowna, BC. And I'm Matt Appel. I'm a member of Mill Creek 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we have with us today Chelsea Hansen, who's the curator of the Washington Masonic Library and Museum. And I guess, Chelsea, thank you very much for spending some time with us. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
So I guess to sort of start things off, how does one become curator of a museum? Did you go to college for that? Is that a school program? How did that happen?
It is not undergrad, but I got my master's at American University in DC, and the master's was in history with a public history emphasis. And people kind of ask, what is public history versus like regular history? And the way that I describe it is it's the study of history, but working on translating it to the masses rather than, going down your own rabbit hole and writing research papers and teaching in a university. You would, practice trying to apply it to museums or historic sites or, even like teaching high school, but just, translating this like maybe broad historic like ideas, but making it more accessible to the general public. And that's something I'm really passionate about is, I think it's very easy to, get lost in like historical dates or, this happened, like get it lost in the minutia, but the real substance is, what we can learn from history. And sometimes you need to find ways to reach people in unique ways that might not be like, read this book on history and, that sort of thing. So, so I got my master's in 2016 in DC, and I just started, trying to work my way into museums. It was really, even for unpaid internships, it's hard to get into the museum world. Sometimes it's pretty competitive, even though it might not be, the biggest salary in the world. There's a lot of
there's usually like one or two museums in the city, right? So there's high demand for, or not very many opportunities. I can imagine high competition. So you must be really good at what you do then.
Well, it's not about, I think it's more about, you have to like stick with it and really like work at it. And, for me, I never really imagined myself being able to do anything else in a profession. Like I was okay taking, maybe the pay gap and being paid a lot less than I would if I were to be like a software engineer or something like that, because I read this was something just I live and breathe, and it's just really fulfilling. But it did take a lot of work to get into it. So I had a lot of unpaid internships. One was in the American History Smithsonian, actually, one of my first internships. And then very low level paid front of house museum jobs. And then, after I got my master's, I was able to I got an internship at a museum and was able to actually get a job there as an associate curator, and it just went from there. So I worked as a curator there for 3 or 4 years and then decided I wanted to move back here. And that was right before COVID hit. And so I kind of moved back without really a job lined up, and then COVID hit and nobody was hiring in the museum world. And like you said, in DC, there's a lot of museums, but even in a Seattle area, there's less museums. And then when COVID hit, that nobody was hiring. So I kind of pivoted and worked in schools for a little bit, and then I saw this listing and applied, and it just went from there. So that's kind of how I ended up in this position.
I think obviously the opposite of public history is secret Masonic history.
Oh,
That's clearly the. But so I guess I sort of jumped over the another big important issue, which is what is the Washington Masonic Library and Museum, and where is it, and what goes on there?
yeah. So the Washington Masonic Library and Museum is the heritage arm of Washington Masonic Services. And Washington Masonic Services is the nonprofit of the Grand Lodge of Washington. And so the Washington Masonic Library and Museum has kind of existed in very different forms ever since, I would say, the Grand Lodge was formed. I mean, there was a small collection in the Grand Secretary's office of items of importance ever since the founding of our Grand Lodge. And there's been, hubs of places where people have collected things of Masonic interest, like library items and historic artifacts. But I would say it kind of exists in its most current form ever since we moved into this building in 2013, 14, I want to say. And then the Grand Lodge consolidated all of its nonprofit efforts, and the library and museum was deemed part of that. And so we're down in the lower level of the Grand Lodge building that Washington Masonic Services shares, and we preserve and collect items that tell the history of Masonry in Washington. And even we do have items even spanning to 17th century England, but the emphasis is Washington Masonry. And that includes, the smallest town or the smallest like rural lodges and the biggest city lodges. All over the state. And that's something that we're really working towards emphasizing with every lodge that we talk to, is like we're preserving and trying to share your history. Like this belongs to you as well. And so, a lot of that takes just getting to know people and establishing relationships and trust. And that's something we're working towards as well.
Yeah, I got to visit the museum when it was still on St. Helens Avenue once, and I was how shall we say, it left an impression. I wished it had been better. But it's
Dungeon-esque.
well,
Dungeon-esque.
yes. Yeah, but it was there have been a lot of people laboring on this for a long time as volunteers. Are you the first official employee, paid person who's doing this, or was there somebody before you?
I'm the first. Yeah. The first paid employee. I mean, there's been a lot of very passionate volunteers, but I mean, with volunteers, and there is more like turnover and not as much consistency just because they don't have as much authority or to make decisions as maybe a staff member would. And so, coming into this job, a lot of, the first things that I've had to do is kind of create policies and procedures that a lot of museum professionals, when they start a job, those things are already in place. So it's it was equal parts intimidating and exciting, because I kind of think of it as like building a museum from scratch. And you just don't really get that chance that often in the museum field. So I like to think of it as a great opportunity. And everybody that I've worked with has been so like generous and trusting with decisions that I've kind of made, and with people who are I'm definitely, whenever I put something forward, it gets a lot of reviews and approval. But I'm pretty honored and touched that I have so much trust from the Masonic community to do this.
So is that something that was part of your master's degree, was like preservation of artifacts and that sort of thing? Or is that something you picked up along the way, or?
Yeah, so the public history degree that I got was more about, how to interpret the history, less the mechanics of actually preserving artifacts. So a lot of that I picked up from internships and on the job training, and I'm still learning. So like, for example, the Washington Historical Society just offered a free archival box making class. So I took that class with a bunch of other curators from around the state, and it was a lot of fun. So now I know how to make custom boxes for artifacts, and I didn't have that skill before. So it's pretty fun. I've been making a lot of boxes for Bibles recently, so it's fun.
So in the interest of full disclosure, I sit on the board of Washington Masonic Services, and I work in the same building. So I was down there the other day, and it is kind of cool seeing you cut out the box, and you had that, was it the metal stripping that goes along the corners and stuff? It was pretty interesting to see.
Are they, not to dive into this geekness, but are they kind of like cardboard-ish type of, are there a special material? What makes an archival box different?
So it's cardboard, but it's pH neutral. So it won't, there's no acidic nature to it. It won't deteriorate the objects it holds. And so but you can use it like cardboard. It's like thicker cardboard, but you're able to build a box that won't hurt the object, basically, and it'll last for like 20, 30 years and be pretty sturdy and helpful that way.
And is that just so that they're more protected when they're in stacks or something, or how does that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for just like odd shaped things like big Bibles that I don't want to like throw in a box because it might, like, the binding might be a little bit loose, and I want to just kind of make sure that it's not like jolting around if somebody were to move the box. Just having a snug box is helpful that way.
Very cool. So you talked about preservation a little bit. Do you do much of that actual preservation? Is there? I'm sure there's an unlimited opportunity for that in our archives, as they not. I know in that previous location, it was not only dungeon-esque, but it was very dank and not well managed.
Yeah. A lot of what I do is prevention. So a lot of the things you have to look out for are like temperature and humidity fluctuations, pests like bugs and rats and that sort of thing. Light is actually a really dangerous thing for some artifacts like photos and paper. So you really don't want to have those things out for that long. At my previous job, I believe it was 6 months at most, and then you have to put it away for 10 years. That was the rule I was told.
Wow.
But other things like metal can be out for much longer. But having those service level understandings of how to keep something in its best condition for as long as possible. But yeah, a lot of what I've been doing is also identifying artifacts that are really in poor shape that eventually I would like to contact an expert and figure out how to better preserve it and actually fix it. You can't fix it, but just like make it better. So for example, we have a ton of rolled up paper and panoramas. And so you can't see the things inside, and you really don't want to like flatten it because it'll be brittle and break. So what a actual conservator will need to humidify it professionally and be able to flatten it out that way. I can't do that. I don't have that skill myself, but I can identify the people who do.
You just hang it up in the shower. The wrinkles will fall out. That's what
I think they'll take my master's away if I do that.
This is I acknowledge a dumb question, but it's something I've been curious about. In the movies, you see people wearing like those white cotton gloves to handle things and whatever. Do you actually do that? Is that a thing, or is that just something that they do in the movies?
Yeah, white cotton is an option, but what I use is the nitrile gloves that you use in hospitals. I think that is a little bit better because cotton can kind of snag on things. But the newest research is that you should only use gloves for certain items. So for paper, actually, it's recommended to have clean, dry hands because if you have gloves, might snag on it and tear it. So that's something that I wasn't trained in when I first was in my master's, but has kind of become more developed as kind of the best practices. So I'm trying to incorporate that. It really just depends on the object. So for metal, have you ever seen like a thumbprint on a metal object that's really
Enameled
old?
something or something? Yep, yep.
Yeah, so that's why you don't want to use your bare hands with metal. And so it just really just depends on the object and if your oily hands are gonna, leave a mark that's gonna last forever.
So you mentioned preservation and whatnot. How much of your what you do involves digital?
Yeah, that's a great question. A- we do have like a lot of, outdated technology that has photographs and videos that will need to transfer to something that's accessible nowadays. And so I have a few things that I've bought on Amazon to like transfer like DVDs to a USB and sort of things like that. But yeah, it is a big part of what we do because we have like oral histories and interviews and stuff like that, that if it stays in the obsolete technology that it is, it'll degrade and we'll lose it. So it's important to transfer it to an accessible form.
And when you do that, does that become more accessible to you know anyone who wants to view it or listen to it or any of that? Or
Yeah.
is it still you have to come to the museum to access that, or is things available online, or you
Um,
know?
yeah, that's the goal is to make it as accessible as possible. So for example, we have past Grandmaster interviews that I have in a USB form and can be easily uploaded to YouTube. It's all about if we have the rights to do that as well. But and photos like that, we have an online database for our permanent museum collection as well as our library. So our library has a database called Library World that kind of has a entry for every single book that we have in our collection. So just keeping that updated so people know what we have and is able to access it. And if we're able to upload like PDF files of like something from the library, we do that as well. We can't
we
upload the
know
whole book, but we can do like a few pages of something.
we know where there's some past grandmaster interviews that you don't have on file, and you're welcome to them. Right, they're on our YouTube channel. Right?
Oh, great. I'll be accessing those.
Good thing. Preservation of this important history.
Yes.
It's interesting when you say rights to the videos. I mean, since the Grand Lodge produced them, wouldn't the Grand Lodge automatically have the rights to those? That's a curious question. I mean, I guess that applies to general other things too, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in the oral history field, I mean, the way I was trained, we have a rights form that people fill out that the interviewee and the interviewer have to sign. And so the ones that oral histories that I've done have had that. I just haven't found any sort of form belonging to those past interviews, but that's not to say it wasn't done or the person didn't sit down thinking that the Grand Lodge should be able to do whatever they want with it.
Interesting. I knew personally, I still know the one that's still alive. The Bud Cook has passed now, but Santi's still around. So I would imagine that that's interesting. And several of those, unfortunately, past grandmasters are now not with us anymore. And so it's a great question to bring up to our potential new grand secretary up in the left-hand corner of our screen. See if we can get a ruling on that from our attorney folks. I would think since we produced it that we should own the rights. Not we, I mean Grand Lodge Washington would have the rights to that.
That it's definitely a question for a lawyer. You are correct.
Yeah, there's some.
Is that something you guys still do? Like do interviews and things like that for archival purposes?
Yeah, I've actually done 2 since I started the job. And that's actually one of the things I most enjoy is doing oral history interviews. It's different being on the other end of being interviewed by you guys, but I love being like behind the camera and asking the questions. So yeah, and I just that's something I really enjoy, and I think just having the face, the person actually speaking and telling you about their lives is just so wonderful to have.
Who were the last 2?
Yeah, so the first was the person who did the Masonic license plate.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then the other one was Chris Kaufman,
Okay.
Most Worshipful Chris Kaufman. So yeah, and he talked a lot about trying to keep things going during a national pandemic, which was fascinating. So
yeah, for sure, definitely a different time.
Yeah, and Don White was the name of the person. He actually got the legislation through the state to make the Masonic license plate possible.
Very cool. It'd be great to get those up on our YouTube channel. We have 2. I mean, not our, but I'm saying ours, I mean the Grand Lodge Washington. But there's actually 2, an old one that we can't really access anymore, and then there's the new one. But
well, both of those are actually on the Washington Masonic Services YouTube channel, so they are on YouTube.
Awesome.
Pardon my ignorance, but what's the Masonic license plate? Why don't I have one?
Well, it's the Washington Masonic license plate, but do any of you have?
You have to have a registered car in Washington.
Oh,
state plate. Okay. State plate. So instead of having like in the logo in the corner and out on the side of the plate, I don't know if you've seen those or not. Yeah, have a square and compass instead of a firefighter symbol or police symbol or whatever.
I think it costs an extra $30 a year, and like 28 of that goes to a charity, and the other 2 runs the program, something along those lines.
Oh, really cool.
So the most important burning question, knowing someone who's involved with running a museum, is: have you ever had your whip and have been holding an artifact and said, "This belongs in a museum"? Because I'm pretty sure that's what happens a lot.
That's my favorite quote of all time. I love Indiana Jones. I'm not kidding. He's really my favorite character ever since I was a kid.
Well, it was meant to be that you ended
that's
up
the best line ever to ever exist in cinema, and I will stand by
that. I swear I did not know that going into this interview.
So, just before we go into hopefully in the next segment, if you're willing to stick around, we have this first segment where we kind of talk about who you are and how you came. Obviously, how did you come to your job? But who is Chelsea? How did you say you moved back to Washington? So you must be Washingtonian originally. So you were kind of born and raised around here. How does that origin story?
I grew up on Vashon Island, which is a 15-minute ferry ride from Seattle or Tacoma. There's ferries on both ends of the island. And I actually went to preschool right next to a building. I had no idea what it was, but it was a white building in Burton, Vashon, with a symbol I did not know at the time. And I grew up on Vashon, and once I got this job, I was driving home down that same road, and I was like, wait, It was Mark P. Waterman Lodge, which
As
I've
if
been
by
there.
magic. As if by magic.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, my story is, yeah, I've always been interested in history and museums, and I grew up on Vashon, went to college in Minnesota and grad school in DC. But yeah, and I had no connection to Freemasonry or very little knowledge about it besides, Dan Brown or National Treasure, both great in my opinion at the time. But once I got the job and, got settled in it and was, talking with my family, I learned that my great grandfather was a Washington Mason. And so I actually got to go look up his record in the Grand Lodge, which was really cool. And so, a lot of times I think people who have no understanding of Masonry besides like, well, Freemasons, they have secrets or what's going on. Is it a religion? Is it not? Once they start to learn more about it, they realize that you usually have a family connection, at least as
And
far
now
as
you can tell them you know all the secrets, right?
yes, all the secrets. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and maybe if I came in with no really preconceived notions, but had heard things around like secrets, what are they're running the world or whatever. But no, it's just the more I learn about it, the more appreciation I have for it, and the history, and what it's all about. So I have a lot of fun in this position.
I was a little afraid you were going to say the more you learn about it, the more disappointed you are, but that's
Still
I'm glad
waiting for your like secrets of how you run the world, but no one's told me yet.
Me too, and it's been 20 something years now. So
And I keep telling people we don't run the world, we just control the weather.
Yeah.
Well, on that questionable note, I think we're looking for looking towards the end of the episode here. So, Chelsea, thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate you spending your time with us this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of David and Stephen, and I guess I should mention our absent fourth member here he had a minor emergency and couldn't be here tonight, but we'll hopefully we'll be here back soon. So anyway, and thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.